A company files its IPO paperwork. Inside it, one number, $45 billion. A single customer paying to rent the most powerful machines on Earth. And then, less than a day later, the man who owns the company goes online and says the deal is actually worth a fraction of that. So, which is true? And why would a billionaire talk down his own $45 billion contract in the middle of the biggest IPO in history? To understand this, you have to understand what's actually being sold here. And it isn't rockets. SpaceX is famous for spaceflight, but buried in its public filing was a different business entirely, one that, on paper, was about to earn more than every rocket launch and every Starlink subscription combined. That business is compute, raw artificial intelligence computing power. Here's the setup. In a facility in Memphis, Tennessee, a cluster called Colossus, sit more than 220,000 specialized chips. Over 300 megawatts of power runs through them, enough electricity to supply a small city, all of it feeding the training of artificial intelligence. And the customer who took over that capacity was not a tech startup you'd expect. It was Anthropic, the company behind the AI assistant Claude. The price? $1.25 billion every month. Now hold on to that number, because the filing said those payments would run through May of 2029. Do the math, roughly 36 months, and you arrive at the headline figure, around $45 billion. The largest AI compute contract anyone had ever seen. And it belonged to a rocket company. But here's the first crack. The company paying that money, Anthropic, and the company collecting it, SpaceX, aren't partners. They're rivals. Elon Musk owns SpaceX. He also owns a separate AI company called xAI, which builds a chatbot called Grok, and Grok competes directly with Anthropic's Claude. So read that back slowly. The maker of one AI was paying the maker of a rival AI more than $1 billion a month to run on his machines. Why would that ever happen? Because the building was, in a sense, sitting empty. Colossus was originally built to train Musk's own Grok. When that capacity opened up, SpaceX did something coldly rational. It found a paying tenant, and the most cash-rich tenant available just happened to be the competition. As one analysis put it, the maker of Claude was now paying the maker of Grok to train the very model that was beating Grok. Call it irony, or just call it capitalism, but a landlord who rents to a rival always keeps one thing in his back pocket: the right to take the keys back. And that, the fine print, is where this story turns. When SpaceX filed its paperwork, the language pointed at one story: payments through May of 2029. A multi-year, $45 billion commitment. That's how the world's press reported it. That's the number that made headlines. And then Elon Musk picked up his phone. Less than 24 hours later, he publicly contradicted his own company's filing. This wasn't a 3-year deal, he said. It was, in his words, a 180-day lease with a 90-day mutual cancellation after that. 6 months, not 3 years. Run that math and the maximum obligation isn't $45 billion. It's closer to $7.5 billion. The gap between what the document implied and what the owner admitted out loud was nearly $37 billion. And then came the most revealing part. Musk explained why the deal was short. The short term, he said, was SpaceX's request, not Anthropic's, because he thought he might need that computing power back. In plain terms, SpaceX handed over the keys because the building was empty and reserved the right to evict. This is the leverage, not the $45 billion. The off-ramp, the party who can walk away, is the party with the power. Now, timing is everything, because this contradiction didn't land in a quiet week. It landed in the middle of SpaceX's IPO roadshow, the exact moment the company was asking investors for the largest sum in the history of public offerings. Think about what that revenue line did for the pitch. A giant, multi-year contract makes a company look stable, predictable, worth more. Investors pay up for certainty. But if that same contract can be canceled with 90 days' notice, it isn't certainty. It's a number that could evaporate in a single quarter. So SpaceX did something telling. It filed an amended prospectus and added the missing detail in writing. After the initial period, either party could terminate with 90 days' notice. The clarification mattered because the question every serious investor now had to ask was simple. Is this $45 billion of guaranteed future revenue? Or is it a 6-month lease wearing a 3-year costume? So what's the truth? It's both, and that's the point. The contract is real. The chips are real. The $1,250 million a month is real. But the $45 billion headline was always a ceiling, not a promise. A maximum that exists only if nobody walks away. And both sides made sure they could. Anthropic relieved its single biggest constraint, access to compute, but threaded that lifeline straight through a rival's building. Every dollar it pays strengthens the empire of the man whose AI it's trying to beat, and the exit clause cuts both ways. Anthropic can leave, but so can Musk, and only one of them owns the walls. The machines keep humming, but the name on the lease, that could change at a moment's notice. Here's what this teaches you about how money and power actually work. A big number on a document is not the same as power. $45 billion looked like dominance, but the real power was never in the size of the deal. It was in who held the off-ramp. The one who can walk away sets the terms. In the age of artificial intelligence, the most valuable thing isn't the model or even the money. It's the infrastructure underneath, the power, the cooling, the machines. And whoever controls that infrastructure controls everyone who has to rent it. The lesson is old, even if the technology is new. Don't read the headline number. Read the exit clause. That's where the power is hiding. If you want to understand the forces shaping money and power, the deals, the founders, the fine print most people never read, subscribe. One documentary every week. Because the game beneath the game is always worth seeing.